Live now, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of Newport City Council Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday the 27th of April. Before we kick off the agenda, I would be amiss of me not to, this is our last meeting before the 5th of May, you all know what the 5th of May is. And despite Purder, I've got to thank you all as members of this committee for your input, contribution and your dedication to planning for the City of Newport. In particular, if I could extend thanks to John Guy, who's not standing on the 5th of May, and John has for many, many years been an active member of the planning committee. His input has been invaluable, in my opinion, on behalf of the people of the city. Richard White, as well, is, I believe, retiring, and he's a former chairman of the planning committee. Thanks to Richard. And then finally, I'd like to thank the officers and the planning department for the way they've supported the committee. Very professional group of people, and I think they've all acted in the best interests of the citizens of Newport. So thank you for listening to that. And if we move on to your agenda, the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. And I've got two at the minute. John Jones, Councillor John Jones and Councillor James Clark. Are there any others, please?
No other apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to make a declaration of interest, and if so, on which matter? And if the procedure is then that there's a form that they must fill in. Any declarations of interest, please? No? Thank you very much. Next item on your agenda, the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of April 2022. They're on pages 3 to 6 of your paperwork. First of all, any matters arising? Will someone propose that a correct record, please? Sorry.
Yeah, I propose a true record, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor White. Everybody agree that they're a correct record then?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any matters? Sorry, any matters arising? No. Thank you very much. We then move on to your agenda itself, which is on pages 7 to 72. And the first item on the agenda, item 1, is pages 15 to 30. It's application number 21-0875. The site is 147 Risker Road. The ward is Alterine. Ward members, Councillor Matthew Evans, Charles Ferris and David Fowweather. The presenting officer is Gail Parkhouse. There is a public speaker objecting, Mr. Dave Lawrence. And the ward member, Councillor David Fowweather, wishes to speak as well. So if we could go to Gail Parkhouse, please, the Principal Planning Officer for presentation. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, good morning all. I'll share my screen. Okay, yeah, so this application then is 21-0875 and it relates to 147 Risker Road, which is a detached dormer bungalow here, which has a fairly generous garden, rear garden, as you can see on the plan here. And here, this is the site here. The application is to construct a 3-bedroom dwelling and a detached garage within that rear garden. And it's also proposed then to demolish an existing garage and shed here. The application is brought before Planning Committee at the request of Councillors Fowweather and Evans. So I will just run through some slides of the site then and the surrounding area. So this is a view looking east along Risker Road here. This is the front boundary wall of the existing property. And then this is the view looking west along Risker Road. Again, this is the front boundary wall of the existing property, and then you can see the access, the existing access there. And then just to give you a wider view of the surrounding area, here is the application property and application site in here. As you can see, the character of the surrounding area is generally detached and semi-detached dwellings, set in good sized plots, set back from the main road. All properties generally have on-site parking, and there's limited on-street parking taking place. Here you've got an allotment site, and then to the south here you've got Coed Melon Park. This dotted line is a public footpath, and then beyond here is St Woolis Cemetery, which is also a registered park and garden. So looking back at the site then, this is the existing entrance to the site. As you can see, the existing drive runs down to the site, past the existing property, and then towards the rear. And there's a closer view then of that driveway running past the house, past the existing house, and then towards the rear. And then this is looking at the rear of the existing house. Here's that garage, and you can just see part of the sheds here, which are supposed to be demolished. So you can see parking and sort of vehicle manoeuvres currently take place at the rear of the property. So this is looking back up the drive. This is the existing house, and then this is Risker Road here. This is the existing front garden. I'll show you shortly that it's proposed to create a parking area here to serve the existing house. And then this is taken from the rear garden. So we're looking at the existing house here, neighbouring properties. This is 149 Risker Road. And the existing, the proposed dwelling is proposed in this approximate position, this part of the garden here. This is looking at the side boundary then of the other neighbouring properties. This is 145 Risker Road, and this is their existing outbuilding and garage. The proposed dwelling will be located in this approximate position here. And then this is looking towards that boundary with 145 Risker Road. There's their outbuilding garage building there. And then a wider view, again looking towards the boundary with 145 Risker Road, the existing property here. And then this is looking at the other neighbouring property, which is 149 Risker Road. And their rear boundary with the site. As you can see, the site is slightly set down from the neighbouring property. It's proposed to create the new driveway entrance around here, that extending along here, and then this would be the start of where the proposed detached garage would be. And then looking at a wider view of where the garage is proposed. This is the rear boundary of 149 Risker Road. This is the side boundary of the neighbouring property again, so that would be 151 Risker Road. And just looking at the extent of the rear garden, as you can see, it's fairly generous. You can see the existing tree cover, which runs along the rear boundary. Again, the existing tree coverage along the rear boundary, and then this would be the approximate position of the proposed dwelling in here. And then just some photos from outside of the site. I talked about that public footpath, so this photo is taken from that public footpath looking back towards the site. So this is the the rear boundary of the site from the public footpath. Again, from the public footpath, you can just see one of the lights there. You can just about see the roof line then of that garage and outbuilding of 145 Risker Road. And then this is taken from the cemetery, looking towards the rear of the site again. You can see those large conifer trees at a more elevated level within the cemetery. These conifer trees, then that's the rear boundary of the site. And then this is taken from probably the highest point where you can have a view of the rear of the property. Again, you can see those conifer trees along the rear boundary. Okay, so just to show you then the proposal. So this is the existing layout of the site. So here's the existing house here. Here's their existing garage and shed. It's the front garden and the driveway running from Risker Road alongside the property into the rear. And then this is the large garden. You can see the trees are marked on in circles here. And then this is the proposed layout. So it's proposed to retain the existing house. A hard standing for 3 cars would be created at the front of the house. The garage and shed would be demolished, then to create a grass garden area for the existing house, and that would be enclosed by a 2-metre high fence, which you can see here. And then it's proposed to construct a new dwelling here and a detached garage here, extending the driveway down and around to meet the garage. So I'll just zoom in to give you a better view of the cross section of the proposed house. So as you can see, it's partly subterranean, so the existing dwelling would be single-storey relative to the neighbouring properties. The gardens bedrooms would be located on the lower ground floor in this position here, and then the other living accommodation on the ground floor level. And I'll show you ground floor plan. So first of all, so here's the garage and the extended driveway, and this would be the ground floor plans with a hall, utility room, kitchen, dining room and living area. You'll note that this area here is glazing across here, opening out onto a decking area here, a timber decking area here. No windows proposed along this elevation, which faces towards 145 Risker Road, and there will be a door here and a window here. Okay, then this is the lower ground floor plan. 3 bedrooms, 1, 2 and 3, and an ensuite and a bathroom here. There'll be glazing here, here and here, and this glazing would open out onto a patio, which would be covered then by that decking above. Just to show you the elevations again. So this elevation here, this view would be seen from, I'll show you, from this direction here. So this is the elevation we'll be looking at. Okay, so as you can see, it's would be a flat roof dwelling, just sitting above the 2-metre high 2-metre high boundary fencing. This is the line of the existing ground level. So the ground level of the proposed property would sit on that existing ground level, and then it would be excavated down to this dotted line to create the lower ground floor level. The The building would be finished in a facing brick, and here would be the glazing, which I talked about, and a canopy then over that decking area, which is here. And then the dotted line here, this area here would be glazing, this area would be glazing, and then this marks the patio layer, patio of the lower ground floor level. This other side elevation, this is what would be seen from 145 Risca Road. It would sit off the shared boundary, and again you can see that it would be just sitting above the fence line, the existing fence line. This would be the elevation then as you would look from the existing house, so the rear of the property, if you like. So this is the proposed dwelling and the side of the garage. This would be a fence line which runs alongside the driveway, and you can see then the gap between the neighbouring boundaries on either side. This would be the front, if you like, of the proposed dwelling. This is the ground floor level. This is the timber decking I mentioned. This would be the lower ground floor level in that excavated area. This would be the fence that runs alongside the drive, and you can see the garage sat behind it. There will be a couple of steps then just taking you down onto the remaining garden area with a glass balustrade to alongside the drop in levels to that lower patio, which would be down here. Okay then, right, so I'll just run through the assessment then. So in terms of publicity first, we consulted all properties which share a common boundary and those opposite the application site, and that included 11 properties, and we also put up a site notice. We received 6 representations from 5 addresses, and the comments are set out in section 6.1 of the committee report, and also a late representation. So the main considerations have been the previous planning history, residential amenity, highway and pedestrian safety, design, trees, landscaping and ecology, heritage impact on the registered park and garden, and contributions. So looking first then at the previous planning history, in 2007 outline planning permission was sought for 4 dwellings on this site, which also included demolition of the existing house. And that site also included the rear garden of 145 Risca Road. So it was proposed to construct 4 dwellings in a crescent shape within the rear gardens. And then to access the site, a central drive would have been created from Risca Road, where the existing house currently is, and was to be demolished. And then the front of the site then was to be left undeveloped. That application was refused and appealed, and the appeal was dismissed, with the inspector concluding that the dwellings would be seen as an incongruous and prominent form of development sitting behind the main building line, and would be highly visible then from public vantage points, including the public footpath. And as some of the houses were being quite close to those existing trees I showed you, he considered that there would be pressure on those trees to be lopped or felled. The inspector also considered that the gap left by demolishing the house would imbalance the site, with a gap in the general building line at the front and then a cramped form of development behind it. So if we considered the outcome of that appeal and that previous proposal, but it's noted that this current scheme does differ quite considerably. You know, the existing house would be retained, The proposed dwelling would sit behind the existing dwelling, and it would not be visible or highly visible from Risker Road. Also, the scale of the building would be low profile and set well off the rear boundary, which has extensive tree cover. And I will cover this in a bit more detail, but just to summarise on that appeal decision, we're satisfied that the current scheme is so different that it only has limited weight in the consideration of this application. Looking then at residential amenity, the proposals have been assessed against the new dwellings SPG, which sets out standards to ensure neighbouring residents and future occupiers have a good standard of living and are not adversely impacted by the proposed development. We are satisfied that the proposed dwelling will provide a good standard of living for future occupiers, with a generous garden and an adequate internal floor space. The existing house would lose quite a large proportion of its garden. However, it's considered that an adequate garden size would remain, and as such there would be an acceptable provision of outdoor amenity for the existing house. We've assessed the relationships with the neighbouring residential properties, and we're satisfied that the proposal will protect existing and future residential amenity in terms of light, privacy and overbearing impacts. We're satisfied that there are suitable separation distances between neighbouring properties and the proposed dwelling to ensure there would not be a loss of privacy within the proposed garden. The single-storey scale relative to the neighbouring houses, and the fact that the proposed windows only face towards the proposed garden and not towards neighbouring houses or their gardens, means that privacy in neighbouring homes and gardens would be protected. We are recommending a condition to ensure that no additional windows are created in the northern elevation. That's the elevation which faces towards 145 Risker Road, and that's just to ensure that neighbouring privacy remains protected. We're also satisfied that due to the single-storey scale of the dwelling and garage with flat roofs, that they would not result in an overbearing impact on the neighbouring gardens or those properties. We do note that the proposal would see vehicle movements running alongside the neighbouring property and the existing house, but we also note that this is an existing situation where vehicles currently park at the rear. There wouldn't be any additional vehicle movements along this drive, as parking for the existing house would then be moved to the front of the property. And while there would be a short lengthening of the drive around to the rear of 149 Risker Road towards that proposed garage, some additional soft landscaping is proposed along the shared boundary to act as a buffer. And then with the existing boundary treatments which are in place, it's considered that the proposed vehicle movements would not be significantly worse than those which currently exist. We've also considered the potential impact of road traffic noise from Risker Road. The existing house would offer some screening from noise, and it's set well back from the road. The council's environmental health officer does not object to the principle of an additional dwelling, but they do recommend that a noise assessment is carried out to inform any necessary mitigation, and we recommend that this is secured through a condition. Looking then at highways and pedestrian safety, and looking at the access first. As mentioned, it's proposed to use the existing access. The width of that access is over 4.5 metres at the front of the site, and this is wide enough to allow two vehicles to pass each other. It then narrows to 2.7 metres wide alongside the existing house, but a passing area would be provided at the front of the site. The highways officer is satisfied with the access and also including adequate visibility coming out of that access in both directions along Risca Road. This is subject to a condition which requires the front wall to be reduced in height to no more than 600 millimetres high. And this would allow for suitable visibility of pedestrians and then of any vehicles manoeuvring within that front parking area. In terms of parking, 1 parking space per bedroom is required for the existing house and the proposed house, up to a maximum of 3 spaces. So each house requires 3 parking spaces. It's proposed to provide 3 spaces at the front for the existing house, and then a double garage with a space in front for the proposed house. And this provision is in accordance with the parking standards SPG. The highways officer is satisfied with this provision and that there is adequate manoeuvrability within the site, so vehicles can exit the site in a forward gear. And you'll note from the late representation that the highways officer has confirmed that the proposed garage is of an adequate size internally to park 2 vehicles. In terms of design, I've mentioned the previous decision of the inspector in that 2007 appeal. As I said, we've considered that decision, but note that the current proposal is very different to that previous scheme. Just 1 dwelling is proposed and the existing dwelling would be retained, and this would maintain the current pattern of development along Risca Road. The proposed dwelling would have a low profile sitting behind the existing dwelling. The garage would equally have a low profile sitting behind the rear boundary of 149. So we consider its visual impact to be limited from Risca Road and would not be adverse. We're also satisfied that the dwelling has a careful design, keeping its profile low so as to prevent any harmful impacts on neighbouring properties and also to keep its visual presence at a minimum. We're also satisfied that because the dwelling would be set back from the rear boundary by around 17 metres, and because there is substantial tree cover along the rear boundary, which we would recommend is retained via a condition, that the views from the public footpath and the cemetery would be very, very limited. As I showed you on the photos earlier, you can see that the rear garden isn't readily visible from these vantage points. We've also noted concerns raised that the proposal would set a precedent for similar backland developments, but every application is determined on its own merits, and should an application be submitted, then we'll consider all the relevant matters. And so this doesn't necessarily mean that the same conclusions would be drawn on another application. Looking at trees then, just bring you back to that photo of the rear boundary. You'll see that there's obviously a number of trees within the garden. Most are found along that rear boundary, but there are also a few specimens within the garden. A tree survey has been submitted with the application, which identifies 4 trees to be felled. This includes a goat willow tree here, a silver birch here, and 2 apple trees here and here. The tree survey also includes protection measures for those trees which would be retained. and the tree officer has no objection to the proposals, subject to the conditions which are set out in the officer report. In terms of landscaping and ecology, the landscaping officer is generally satisfied with the proposals, as views would be screened by the existing tree line. They consider it important that these trees are retained, and as I said, we're recommending a condition to ensure this. They also recommend hard and soft landscaping details are secured through a condition, and we have recommended this also. In terms of ecology, a bat roost assessment and an ecological mitigation and enhancement plan has been submitted with the application. The assessment concludes that there will be no harmful impacts to bats. The trees to be felled would have little value to support roosting, and there would only be limited opportunities for common species of nesting birds. The assessment identifies a number of precautionary mitigation measures and enhancements, and the council's ecology officer is satisfied with those measures and enhancements, subject to a condition to secure them. We are also recommending an informative to alert the applicant to their responsibilities under the Wildlife and Countryside Act in case of any protected species, should they be encountered during works. But you'll note that the council's ecology officer did not consider that the site warranted any full ecological impact assessment. In terms of heritage then, because the neighbouring St Willis Cemetery is a registered park and garden, we have consulted with CADU, who are a statutory consultee for registered parks and gardens. They advise that the proposal would not have an impact on the setting of the registered park and garden. This is due to the existing vegetation and the existing backdrop of houses behind it. Looking at planning contributions, the construction of one dwelling generates a requirement to contribute financially towards affordable housing. A sum of 1,649 has been requested in accordance with the planning obligations SPG, and that's been agreed by the applicant. And with this contribution, we're satisfied that the proposal would help to deliver more sustainable communities. Just to summarise some of the other considerations, the impacts in relation to drainage and waste are also considered acceptable, as I set out in the report. And then finally, just to sum up, officers are satisfied with the proposed development, and we are recommending that planning permission is granted with conditions and subject to the signing of that legal agreement. And that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Gail, thank you very much. Thank you. We've now got a public speaker who's objecting, Mr. Dave Lawrence, who's a neighbour. Mr. Lawrence, welcome to the Planning Committee.
Hello there, how are you?
Okay.
I've got two letters, one from myself and one from a neighbour who's on the opposite side, Mr. Dave Gallivan. So if I could read the two of them out, that would be much appreciated. Awesome. My family and I have lived at 149 Roost Road next door to the application, and I've done so for the past 25 years. The applicant has likened this application to two others that have been passed by NCC Planning. 181 Roost Road in 2019. This application has no relevance to the proposal, as there's already been a dwelling in the rear of the existing plot. 24 Roost Road, Rochestone in 2018. This application was passed as there was access onto the rear of the proposed site of Ponty Mason Lane, and yet again it's no relevance to 147 Roost Road, where they proposed to share a drive. Directly opposite the proposed entrance is a bus stop. Valleys and local buses stop as much as 3 times in an hour, meaning vehicles travelling in the same direction as the bus pass crossing over the centre lines into the oncoming traffic. With more vehicles using the same ground, surely this is a concern for pedestrian and vehicle safety. The majority of Roost Road is characterised by a linear form of development with 2-storey and single-storey dormer bungalows with large rear gardens With the inclusion of a dwelling, it would mean the existing double garage to be demolished to create a minuscule garden for the remaining bungalow, totally out of character for this area. The proposed development would extend almost along the entire length and rear of my property. There would be a minimum separation distance off the boundary with my property. The proposed provision of the dwelling, together with associated access and parking areas, would dominate and subsume the area. The proposal clearly fails to respect the surrounding linear pattern of development. Given these factors, the proposal would result in a cramped form of backland development that is not in keeping with the surrounding area. This matter was noted by Welsh Office Inspector in the 2000 application. A similar planning application of 147 was refused and dismissed at appeal in 2007, and I understand the planning policies have changed, but Mr. Ian Osborne, JP and Inspector appointed by the Welsh Office Ministers, quoted, "Although every application must be considered on its merits, nevertheless, had I allowed this appeal, it would have made it more difficult for the council to resist similar proposals in the long rear gardens of other dwellings along this stretch of Risco Road, the cumulative effect of which would be very seriously to erode the spacious character of the locality." This is from Mr. Dave Gallivan. For some background, I've lived at 145 Risco Road since 2011, and prior to this, my parents lived since 1968. My main and overriding objection to this proposed development is that it will start to form a secondary layer of houses behind the uniform line of existing houses along Risco Road. There is no doubt that this will have a detrimental effect on the character and ambience and appearance of this residential area, and will also detract from the beautiful leafy wooded walks many enjoy when using the recently upgraded footpath at Coed Melyn Park. This part of Risco Road is made up of largest residential detached properties with a general line of houses running parallel to Risco Road, which is the main highway from the valleys into the city centre. The properties are set in large plots with long back gardens leading onto Coed Melyn Park, giving the area its spacious feel and appearance. This proposed development will undermine the existing layout and encroach on the spacious appearance and feel of the area. I have real concerns of what the future ramifications and impact there will be if approval is given for this development. Many, myself included, feel that if this granted, the application to develop would open up the floodgates for further developments, changing this part of Newport, Risco Road and Coed Melyn forever. Should the application be agreed, it would be my intention to develop my garden, and neighbours have indicated that they would do the same. However, please be aware that the long-standing local residents have no desire to develop their gardens, and they enjoy everything that is good about this area. However, to reiterate, they all feel that any new housing in back gardens will lead to more and more. They have lived there for a long time, whilst the applicants have been on Risco Road for just 4 years, and I know it is their intention to move from Risco Road should their development be approved, leaving me and my family to the negative consequences of their business venture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you. If we could then move to ward member who wishes to speak, Councillor David Fairweather. Thank you. Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Morning, committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this morning. There are a few points I just wish to raise. First of all, the proposed parking or development of parking at the front of 147 Risco Road will totally alter the street scene. All these properties have nice long gardens, and providing parking at this site will alter the street scene. Secondly, parking on the road is not possible. For anybody that knows the Risco Road, the council some time ago put in wooden posts to stop residents parking on the nice green verges. So there is no availability whatsoever of parking, and there is limited room for manoeuvre onto Risco Road from these properties. I'm also concerned that the property is flat roofed. That is not in keeping with the area. As Mr. Lawrence has told you, many of these, all the properties along Risco Road have gable roofs. This one will not. It's totally out of character, Chair, with the area that we have. And I think that the comment made by Miss Parkhouse, the planning officer, was very telling when she said that if other developments then came forward, they would be considered on their merit, which means that there would be further development in these back gardens in the future, and I have concerns about that. Mr. Lawrence also has this garage which is quite near to the rear of his property, and if they do approve this property, I would like a condition put on, Chair, that the garage cannot be turned into office space or living accommodation. It must be a garage and nothing more than that, as that will take away parking at the back as well. There is issues with the tree line, I believe. Coed Melyn Park is a very special area. The council have invested a great deal of money at that park to put in the footpath and the lighting. I think there will be an impact on the wildlife at this site. And of course, the council has a policy which we all agreed at council over the protection of bees. Taking away green space obviously has an impact on bees and their protection. That's basically what I'd like to say, Chair. I would like the committee, if possible, to take my points on board and refuse this application on the points that have been made. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Thank you. If we then could move to Councillor Charles Ferris, if you wish to speak, you are a ward councillor, so you go first.
Yeah, coming now, here we are, Chairman. Yes, this strikes me as such an ungainly plan anyway. I mean, they're going to half bury the building to get it in, and then what's left over they're counting on a high hedge of leylandii, which is a problem in itself. Also, it necessitates a shared driveway. Well, we don't normally like that on developments anyway, so I see very little merit in the proposal anyway. But the impact on the leafy lane of the Sustrand upgraded walkway would be quite severe. You would have vehicles moving around at the bottom servicing this proposed development, and it would kill the ambience of that area. It's a lovely development. You've got Coed Melyn on the one side, and you have the Nancoke Brook running alongside the walkway there, and it's delightful. It's like being out in the heart of the country when really you're in an urban environment, and that would represent to me some substantial loss. You can see that if this development goes ahead, you've got 3 or 4 houses adjacent to it, which would have the potential for a similar sort of development. I do hope we reject this. I got a facsimile map from 1820, which I find of interest. It shows what Newport would be like at the time of the Chartists, and I was surprised to see Coed Melyn is on there as a feature. It's about one of the few things that we have that have remained unaltered, and I think the ambience and the pleasure of that successful amenity, it's one of the things that we've done right, should be preserved. Apart from that, I don't think I've got anything to add, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris. Thank you very much. Councillor Jason Jordan, you wish to speak? Thank you very much. Jason?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. That's same what Charles just said. You know, I'm more concerned about this shared driveway. Actually, you know, is the applicant would be the owner of the new property, or would he be selling it for a purposely, you know, to make money himself? But what I'm trying to say is if they ever become a dispute between the two properties, what happens with the actual driveway then as well?
Okay. Gail, do you wish to come back in on any of those points raised at this stage? Or?
I mean, I'll just mention the shared driveway. Obviously, the access at the front of the property, you know, highways have looked at that. They've determined that it's wide enough for, you know, for 2 vehicles to pass, and there's enough manoeuvrability then at the front of the site. So there's no reason why cars off of the existing house would need to come along any further than the existing house at the moment. So there shouldn't be any conflict really, no, with vehicles passing each other. And then in terms of, sort of ownership then of that access lane, well, that would be down to sort of a legal agreement with any sort of house sale. Yes, that's what I'd say on that.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Councillor John Guy, you're indicating, please.
Yeah, the word precedent is a wide expanding word in the legal profession and everything else, really. What I'm concerned is that the precedent of the application of any planning, that can you assure me that each and every planning application is actually examined specifically on the conditions? That precedent can, in legal terminology, mean something hard and fast which you follow. But what I'm concerned is, will any future application, if this is taken as being approved, that it'll be looked at thoroughly and individually?
Yeah. Have we got a legal officer present? If you want to answer that, Gail.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, yeah, in terms of precedent, I mean, in assessing this application, I think it was mentioned that there have been other decisions made further along Risca Road and further afield for this sort of backland development. In assessing this application, I didn't consider the precedent of those applications, and so it is very much been assessed on its own individual merits, this application. And if we were to get any subsequent applications, and I'm not aware of any coming forward at the moment, then all the matters that I just run through with you and in the officer report, all of those matters would be looked at afresh again. So yes, and every site is unique, so it would be assessed on its individual merits.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Guy. Thank you, Gail. Any other committee member? Yvonne Forsey, Councillor Forsey, please.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. Can you just assure me that those large trees at the bottom of the garden there are going to be retained? Because I think there's going to be very low impact house, isn't it? And it's not going to be visible from the Coed Melin Park. So I think it's important that those large trees are retained. And is that in the conditions?
Gail, to answer that, please.
Yes. So we're recommending a condition that those trees are retained. Also, the tree survey that was submitted includes protection measures for those trees during any construction works. Okay,
thank you very much. Councillor Trevor Watkins, you've indicated, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A number of things which I want clarification on. Gail mentioned about, and Councillor Guy mentioned about precedent. This is normally taken up into support of other applications where a development has taken place and somebody else wishes to do exactly the same. So it supports the new application. So precedence is taken into consideration on a number of planning applications which Newport City Council have taken up. The other thing was mentioned also about the driveway. Obviously, Gail, the officer, mentioned about the maintenance of that and the legal obligation written into the legal documents in regards to the maintenance of the driveway to the both properties. The other thing is the officer mentioned about the development being submerged, or the bottom part of it, and material being taken out. Can the officer clarify the narrowest point on the driveway to ensure that vehicles, commercial vehicles, can access that bottom site to remove the material which has to be removed? And if so, will there be some sort of wheel wash there to maintain that? The other thing is parking at the front of the property. for the development which is already there. This concerns me because I don't see any parking in the front of any other properties. So this is another thing that sets the precedent in regards to an application by other property owners to develop the front of their properties for parking in the fronts. I don't see the well, I can see the reason why, but they're going to demolish the garage of the property which is already there to accommodate the parking in the, and with the accommodating the parking in the front, so you don't get the two lots of traffic going down the side of the properties. Just clarify on those. I am concerned about this development, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watkins. A long list of relevant questions as usual. Back to Gail, please, if you're ready to answer.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I want to say anything else about precedent. Like only to, you know, only that I've already spoken about. Can I just share the slide, the aerial view slide of the wider area? Because you're concerned about parking at the front of properties. There are instances where there's parking at the front. So the neighbouring property, they have a garage at the front actually already and some hard standing there. There's this kind of parking area here as well. I think opposite, they have some parking at the front. So it wouldn't be the first property to have some parking at the front. So for us, we consider it to be visually acceptable. So that's to cover that there. You mentioned the removal then of earth to create that subterranean level and the width of the access alongside the house. I know the width of the access is 2.75. I don't know the width of a tipper or anything like that, I'm afraid, off the top of my head. We haven't included a condition for a construction environmental management plan, but we can add that to ensure, you know, that contractor parking, the removal of material happens in a way which is acceptable, you know, to neighbouring amenity, and that, you know, vehicles are brought off the highway, and to ensure that that happens in appropriate manner. The last point you raised, sorry, can you just refresh my mind?
It was the maintenance, but you elaborated on that with Councillor John Guy, didn't you?
Right, okay, yeah. Okay.
So the other thing is, Gail, you mentioned 2.75. Now, is that the widest area or the narrowest area?
That's the narrowest point, as it were.
In the two development houses, the house of 147 and 149.
That's right, yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Richard White is indicated, and then Councillor Charles Ferris again.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps Gail could explain. Welsh Water have said that there's an existing sewer crossing the site, which I assume is the sewer which goes up along the backs of the properties. It's alleged in one of the objections that this sewer drain was altered by a previous owner of this house to take it around what is now the existing car parking space of the existing house, bringing it very close to the new property. Will there still be adequate clearance for Welsh Water to access that pipeline? Because there is, I could not find any drainage drawing given with this application. And just to clarify, on the site layout, there's 3 parking spaces in a bay for the existing house, but there's also a car shown parked across those 3. Is that a designated parking space, and if so, will it conflict with the passing space for the vehicles accessing the rear property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor White. Do you want to hold on that, Gail, or I'll move on to Charles Ferris, and then Gail can come back in to answer those points. Charles?
Thank you, Chair. I was fortunate enough to live on Risco Road for well, all my school and teen years, and it's an area that I know well. And although there may be driveways that people park their cars on, the general feel of the area is of well-kept front gardens. And I can only say that 3 cars parked abreast, as which would be the sort of facility of the bay, and especially with a low wall to get the visibility display, would stand out like a sore thumb. So it's all like they're nice, well-kept gardens, traditional houses, and I think really the efforts made to lever this development into the given area is just far too much, and it'll be a great detriment to the area.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris. Can we come back to Gail to answer the points raised by Councillor White?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned the sewer. I mean, Welsh Water haven't identified an issue. They've not raised an objection, and it will be, you know, a separate agreement really with Welsh Water. You know, should there be a sewer in place, then they will have to make those appropriate agreements with Welsh Water, separate to planning. Now, in terms of the access and the parking across the front, which was shown on a plan, that plan is just identifying really that there's sufficient space for 2 vehicles to pass at that point. So that's not a dedicated parking space. It's just indicating the width of the driveway there.
Thank you very much. There's no other committee member indicating they wish to speak, so is someone prepared to propose? Make a proposal, please. Councillor Guy.
Chair, to move things forward, so that there is a vote, I recommend that this application be granted with conditions and a legal agreement as per the planning officers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. Is anyone prepared to second that, please?
Second.
Thank you very much. It's been seconded. So it's been proposed we accept the officer's recommendation and seconded. Gail, could you organise a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, for the officer's recommendation as to conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins?
Oh,
Councillor,
sorry, I was on mute. For the
problem.
officer's recommendation, subject to the conditions being imposed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor White?
I'm afraid I don't like backland development, so I'm against the application.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris?
Against the application.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, against.
Councillor Lacey?
I'm against the application.
Thank you. Councillor Forsey?
For the officer's recommendation.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Chair, that's 4 against and 4 for the officer's recommendation. So it's
one of those situations.
yes, it's one of those situations.
Well, I can't change my mind. I must go for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So could you repeat the outcome for the benefit of the committee and the public, please?
Sorry, Chair, that was for the officer's recommendations from your decision.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone that contributed. If we could then move to item number 2, which is on page 31 to 54 of your paperwork. It's application number 21-1106. The site is 40 Stow Hill, Zanzibar. The ward is Stow Hill. The ward members are councillors Kate Thomas and Miqdad Al-Nuami. The presenting officer is Gail Parkhouse. There is a public speaker in support of this application, Mr. Michael Southall, who's the agent. So, Gail, over to you again, if you can grab your bets. And thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah, so this application is 21-1106 and it relates to 40 Stow Hill, which has had various names when previously used as a nightclub. Historically, it was a former chapel. So the building is listed and it's located within the town centre conservation area, and the application is to demolish the rear portion of the existing building and its later extensions, and then to retain the listed facade onto Stow Hill, and the construction of 2 apartment buildings to provide 36 residential units with associated access, parking and landscaping. So here is the building we're looking at here, and this is its facade. So yeah, this is the facade that you can see from Stow Hill. As I mentioned, the building's original use was as a chapel, dating around the mid-19th century. It was listed in 1980 for its contribution of its grand classical front to the town centre conservation area. The building had been severely damaged by a fire in 2018, which also damaged much of the neighbouring building here, which is Bethel Pentecostal Church, also a listed building. Much of the original building has been lost, although, as you can see, the facade has survived intact, but it is in a deteriorating state. So the facade remains a prominent feature on Stow Hill, and it's considered to make a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the conservation area. Just to describe the site and the wider context of the site, this is Stow Hill at the front of the building. This is North Street to the rear of the building. This is the Bethel Pentecostal Church. You can see the scaffolding there as repair works are underway after the fire damage. And then you can see the extent of the fire damage of the application building here. To the north, you have an office building which is occupied by solicitors, and then these buildings here, here and here are all residential properties. And then further north here you can see that the main commercial area of the city centre. Just to run through some photos of the site then, starting at the front, here's that facade, which would be retained as part of the proposals. This part is also part of the building and part of the application site, and behind this scaffolding. It's proposed to demolish this part, which is a later section of the building. And then here's those solicitor building here and the Pentecostal church here. Like I said, which is being renovated and rebuilt after that fire damage. Just some photos just to show really, I suppose, the extent of the fire damage. You can see here that the previous pitched roof has been lost in the fire And then also you can sort of see the state of deterioration that the building it's currently in. So yes, so the facade does need some care and restoration. This is a side elevation taken from a lane which runs alongside that solicitor's building. Again, you can see the deterioration, vegetation growth, and the later additions which survived the fire, but aren't considered to be good quality designed buildings. Excuse me. Looking towards the rear of the site, then it's proposed to demolish these yellow brick buildings, and this then is the side of a residential property, which I believe is currently vacant, but in residential use nevertheless. And then you can just see that Pentecostal church on the side there. Here's another look at that residential building here. This is looking down North Street towards the main commercial area in the city centre. And then this is looking north, then south. No, north. Yeah, sorry, north towards the Pentecostal church, and then those residential properties. And then another wider view looking north along North Street with those residential properties. And just noting here how the site drops in levels then from the street level. And then another view, you can see some of the fire damage, and then you can also see that the state of disrepair that the building is in. Okay, so I'll just run through the proposals. This slide shows the layout of the proposed development. So it's proposed to have two separate apartment blocks. You have Block A and Block B. There'll be an internal parking court providing 13 parking spaces, one with an electrical vehicle space here, a charging space, sorry, here, and an access partly using the existing access from North Street. There would be a small communal garden here. There would be a cycle storage building here for 27 cycles, and a bin storage building here. And then this grey square here is an electric substation. So I will look firstly then at Block A. So I mentioned that a large part of the building would be demolished, and this slide shows the extent of that demolition. So the areas shaded red would be demolished, and then the areas in blue here would be retained. So that includes the front facade here and the side return walls. So keeping the facade in place, it's proposed to construct a 5-storey apartment block behind that facade and setback. It would appear as 4 stories from Stow Hill due to that drop in site levels, but you can see here the 5-storey element behind. It's also proposed to reinstate that pitched roof behind the main facade, and the proposed apartment block would be attached to the facade and side walls by a steel frame support. And here's a slide just to show that steel frame support in place and to keep the facade during demolition works, and then to attach the building afterwards. The new apartment block, like I said, would be set back from the main facade. You can see this is the new apartment block here. This is the facade. And as you can see, this is the rear elevation. As you can see, it would have a fairly simple and contemporary form with a flat roof. It would provide 15 one-bed units and 8 two-bed flats. Access to the flats would be from Stow Hill here or from the rear of the building. And here's a cross section through the building, just to show you how it relates really then to the retained facade. Okay, so it's proposed to fully restore the facade with a suite of remedial works to defects in the building, the removal of modern paintwork and fixings and infills to the windows. It's then proposed to reinstate the windows to their original openings, reinstate the entrance door, repair and reinstate the front steps, and to also replace the front railings with a more appropriate design. So that this drawing kind of shows the building in its full, but actually the street level kind of cuts across along the line of my mouse here. So there would be railings above these windows at street level. Looking then at block B, just to remind you, this is block B, which would be separate from block A and the listed building. It would be at the rear of the site. It would be 3 stories in height along the North Street frontage, and then reducing down to 2 stories at the rear. So this is the elevation you would see from North Street. This is its side elevation, being the front as it looks to the road. So 3 stories here, dropping down to 2 stories with the flat roof at this point. This would be the rear elevation, and then this would be the other side elevation. You have North Street here. The design of the block would be similar to that of the block A, so also a contemporary modern finish with the same materials. The block will provide 11 one-bed flats and 3 two-bed flats, and like I said, both blocks would be finished in the same materials, which are light and dark grey facing brickwork, white render, blue-black cement roof tiles, zinc cladding, grey UPVC windows and composite doors. All of the proposed flats would be affordable, and the applicant is a housing association. Okay, so to run through the assessment then, and in terms of publicity, we consulted all properties within 50 metres of the application site, which included 86 properties. We also put up a site notice and a press advert. No responses were received from that publicity. So the main considerations have been the principle of development and demolition, the heritage impacts, residential amenity, highways and active travel, design, landscape, ecology and protected species, waste and recycling, ecology and planning obligations. Looking first then at the principle of development, the application site is previously developed land located within the settlement boundary. It's considered to be a sustainable site within the city centre. The listed building is in a vulnerable state with extensive fire damage. The building has stood vacant for some time, and as such the principle of finding a long-term use for the building and the site is supported then by policies SP1 and SP18 of the LDP. The proposal would deliver housing which would far exceed the density requirements of LDP policy H3. And so it's considered to be an efficient use of the land, and an apartment-led scheme is considered appropriate for this city centre location. The proposed development would deliver 100% affordable units, which would be managed by Link Cymru, the applicant. This is considered to be welcomed, additional affordable housing, and is supported by the council's housing strategy manager. When considering the partial demolition of the listed building, it's recognised that preservation of just a facade is not normally considered an acceptable approach. However, in this instance, the fire damaged rear portion of the building is in such a state of disrepair and it can't be salvaged. The scheme provides an opportunity to restore and repair the main facade, which is highly desirable and welcomed. And as such, the general principle of the demolition and restoration is considered acceptable. So overall, the principle of development is considered acceptable and the additional delivery of affordable housing is welcomed by officers. Looking then at the heritage impacts, a heritage impact assessment and a conservation method statement have been submitted with the application. They provide a detailed methodology for the repair and restoration works. The Historic Buildings and Conservation Officer has no objection to the proposed works, including the new rear apartment blocks. But this is subject to a suite of conditions to agree matters such as material samples, methods of paint removal, repair and repointing, the window fittings, reinstatement of a gate pier, and details of precautionary works when demolishing adjacent to that neighbouring listed building, the Pentecostal church. It's considered that the proposed works and the recommended conditions would ensure the special interests of the listed building are protected and enhanced, and the character and appearance of the conservation area is preserved. And as mentioned earlier, this opportunity to restore the listed facade is very much welcomed by officers. Looking then at residential amenity, we've assessed the proposals against the new dwellings SPG, which sets out standards to ensure neighbouring residents and future occupiers have good standards of living and are not adversely impacted by the proposed development. We're satisfied that the proposed flats would provide a good standard of living for future occupiers. And whilst there's only limited outdoor amenity space available, this is a city centre location where requirements for such provision is generally more relaxed, recognising that it's a dense urban site and also then the proximity to facilities within the city centre. We have assessed the relationships with neighbouring residential properties and we are satisfied that the proposal would protect existing and future residential amenity in terms of light, privacy and overbearing impacts. We've also considered the potential impact of noise from the surrounding commercial area. The Council's Highway Environmental Health Officer does not object to the principle of residential development in this location, but requires that a noise assessment is secured through a condition which should identify any mitigation necessary. And we're satisfied that with an imposition of a condition, any noise impacts can be mitigated. Looking then at highways and active travel, a transport statement has been submitted with the application. It notes that the proposal is likely to generate less vehicle movements than the previous commercial use, and as such it would not create a capacity issue on the local road network, and the highways officer is satisfied with this. The highways officer also has no objection to the access onto North Street, which partly utilises the existing access. In terms of parking, you'll note that 13 spaces are proposed. This is a city centre location and it's in parking zone 1. whereby the sustainable nature of the site means that parking provision can be at 0. The applicant has chosen to provide some parking, which we consider to be acceptable. It's also proposed to provide 27 cycle spaces, which would accord with the Sustainable Travel SPG. A condition is recommended to secure the details of the cycle storage building to ensure that they are safe and secure. Looking at design then, the design and materials of the proposed new apartment blocks are considered to be of an acceptable quality. Due to the drop in levels within the site, it's also considered that the scale of the development is in keeping with the surrounding area. So the 3-storey height of block B at the rear of the site and facing onto North Street, because of the drop in levels, would actually sit at a comparable 2-storey scale to the adjacent terrace to the south. And then the massing of block A is also considered to be of a sensitive scale to the retained facade, and also the adjacent buildings, which are of a larger massing than the residential scale along North Street. Block A includes extensive fenestration at the rear, which is considered to help break up the massing of the block when viewed in the context of the residential buildings along North Street. So overall, the design of the proposed buildings are considered acceptable, and we consider that it would deliver high quality development in accordance with policy GP6. In terms of landscape, a landscaping plan has been submitted with the application, but the council's landscape officer has highlighted a number of concerns with that proposed plan. But because these are generally minor concerns, we're recommending a condition is imposed to secure a detailed soft and landscaping plan, along with a management and maintenance plan. This will also allow the applicant to develop their sustainable drainage scheme alongside their drainage proposal, so the two will correlate together. Looking at ecology and protected species, the site itself is generally considered to have low ecological value. It mainly consists of hard standing and those buildings. A bat and nesting bird survey has been undertaken, which did not find any bats or signs of bats in buildings. Some potential roost features were noted, and some bats were seen flying in the vicinity, and as such a suite of precautionary measures are recommended through a condition. In addition, a condition is recommended to secure ecological enhancements, such as bird boxes or native and nectar-rich planting. And overall, the council's ecology officer has no objection to the proposals. In terms of waste and recycling, a large bin store is proposed. It has a floor area of 35 square metres. The precise details of the bin store are recommended through a condition. However, the size of the store and its location are considered acceptable. The highways officer has noted that there would be appropriate access for refuse collections from that building. Looking at archaeology, the site is within the archaeologically sensitive area. The Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust have advised that it is possible to encounter archaeological remains in this area, but they note that the ground is likely to have already been disturbed from the original construction of the chapel, so they don't think that archaeological remains would be encountered during the proposed works. They have no objection, but a condition is recommended to secure a historic building survey prior to any works commencing. Turning to planning obligations, as I mentioned earlier, the proposal is for 100% affordable housing, so contributions towards affordable housing, education and leisure would not be required where a scheme is delivering affordable housing. However, to safeguard the authority, a Section 106 planning obligation is required to secure those contributions should any of the units be sold privately as market housing. These terms have been agreed by the applicant, and the legal agreement is currently underway and in preparation. So just to summarise on some of the other considerations, the impacts in relation to drainage and contamination are considered acceptable as set out in the report. And then to sum up, officers are satisfied with the proposed development. The provision of affordable housing is welcomed, along with the opportunity to restore and repair the historic facade. And we are recommending planning permission is granted with conditions and then subject to the signing of the legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. Thank you. We have now a public speaker, Mr. Michael Southall, who's the agent. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Thanks for the opportunity to address you here today. So my name's Mike Southall. I work for Avis & Young. I'm the applicant for, I'm the agent for this application and represent Link Cymru as the applicant. Obviously propose a scheme before you. I don't wish to reiterate Gail's presentation, it's very comprehensive, but I would like to offer members some further comments for consideration. So just in terms of background, members have no doubt appreciate that there's been a long-term will to regenerate the site following its closure, the nightclub's closure probably a decade or so ago. Whilst planning permission and listed building consent were granted for a residential redevelopment scheme back in 2015 and 2016 respectively, the building was subject to significant fire damage. It was completely gutted inside and resulted in structural concerns about the building's future. So following this, I think there were clearly viability concerns with the delivery of the previously approved scheme, and this is believed to have led to the sale of the site to our client. So since acquiring the site, we've worked alongside the council to propose a scheme that seeks to meet an identified housing need in the area, whilst seeking to preserve the building's heritage importance. From a planning policy perspective, site's considered to be in a sustainable location, well placed for residential development in the city centre. It's located in the settlement boundary. It's not allocated for any specific land use purpose. Officers support the principle of development and have confirmed that the proposals comply with the relevant policies of the local development plan. Officers support the proposals to demolish the unsympathetic rear additions to the building and to restore the facade that's onto Stow Hill. We work closely with the council's conservation officer on the facade retention detail to ensure the special interests of the listed building are protected and enhanced. The apartments have been designed to meet the council's space standards outlined in the new dwellings supplementary planning guidance. The scheme also seeks to protect the living conditions of nearby occupiers, none of whom object to the application. The scheme's also been designed to include sustainable urban drainage features, SUDs. These take the form of a mixture of permeable paving on the main driveway into the scheme and off North Street, that is. And they also include the use of water butts and bioretention features within the landscaped areas of the site. There's been a pre-application inquiry as part of the SUDs process with the council's sustainable drainage approval body, and we'll submit a drainage application in due course. From a community benefit perspective, in addition to the provision of much needed affordable housing, Link are also pledging 0.25% of the total build cost of the project to schemes in the local area. So these schemes or projects are identified through liaison with community groups, schools, the council, for instance. So they'll be rolled out in due course. So in summary, the proposals accord with both national and local planning policy and will make efficient use of a redundant brownfield site, seeking to preserve a fire damaged listed building. On this basis, and since there's no technical objections from statutory consultees or objections from neighbours, and the project represents a £7 million investment in Newport, we'd urge members to support the officer's recommendation to grant plan permission for this development. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Southall. Much obliged to you. Could we then move to the planning committee? I've got Councillor Jordan indicating, then Councillor Guy, then Councillor Ferris, and then Councillor Lacey. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Gail, can you tell me, please, what the size of the flats are then, and are they at the standard of what we need to do?
Yeah, the size of the flats, they're all on one plan. I think one flat fell 1 square metre short of the standards. So, you know, that one flat falling just 1 square metre short, you know, we didn't think would result in a harmful impact on the occupied, but all the other flats meet the standards set out in the new dwellings SPG.
It didn't state on the report. It's all on our report. I couldn't see anything on it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. That's been clarified. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, can I say this is a very good proposal. A lot of the main considerations have been covered. Regenerations on this site have been needed, obviously, because of what's happened on that site in the past. And can I say it's a mirror image further down Stow Hill, the Stow Hill bars, where the facade was retained, and you had the provision behind that. That's very important that the facade of the building is retained. So taking everything into consideration, I think it's been well covered, particularly the retention of the facade, which is the same as the one at the front of Stow Hill bars, which we of a certain age used to attend.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Charles Ferris.
Thank you, Chair. Gail, I noticed there's a disparity between the windows on the facade and the floors of the building. Do the windows not illuminate anywhere, and does the door not lead anywhere? Are they all false?
Just sharing my slides. Is this the elevation you're referring to, or is it the cross section?
That's the one. You've got it.
Okay, yeah. So these windows, they're really large windows, and so there's if I can show you the cross section. You can't see, sorry. I do have a cross section which shows the flats kind of within that, or which would have access to those windows. So they're sort of a masonette flat with a raised ceiling, if you like. So there wouldn't be crossing through of floor levels through the windows. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, do they illuminate the interior?
I mean, yes, they're real windows. They're real windows.
Real windows. And,
yeah.
And does the door lead anywhere into the building?
Yes, this would be, yeah, this is the access to the flat. So you can either get access from the front of the building or from the rear, but yeah, so it's communal access.
Yep. So it's all for real, but effectively, yeah. It's not a fancy. That's good. I'll probably get told off for asking the next question. Of course, with the market, there was a provision for accommodation, wasn't there? But that hasn't gone ahead, or isn't going ahead, according to Mr. Baston. Does this compensate for it? Is it the same housing trust that's applying? Maybe I shouldn't ask that.
I don't know.
Well, Gail, I would imagine you should reply. I couldn't possibly comment.
Yeah,
is the best reply to that.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing there, Charles, is conjecture in effect, but
curiosity, Chairman, just curiosity.
Indeed, but we don't want to spoil the reputation of our committee, do we? So,
well, it's the last one I thought we could have a go.
Yeah. Okay, well, if I could move on then to Councillor Laura Lacey. Thank you, Charles.
Cheers.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check that their affordable housing, is there a demographic in terms of the affordable housing? I know we get some affordable that are 55 plus. Is there a demographic, or is it open to all? And also just a comment to make that I think it's a really clever use of a really unsightly building at the moment, and most welcome. But so if I could just get the demographic of the occupants, please.
Thank you, Laura. Gail, are we privy to that information?
I'm not. I've not been told what the demographic would be. I'm afraid all I know that it's just 100% affordable.
That's fine. So it's not specifically allocated to 55 plus, for example. So it's just open to everybody at the moment, as far as you're aware.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it is the honest answer.
Thanks, Gail.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Laura. Councillor Richard White.
Thank you, Chair. Just clarification. Block B, the southern elevation, has got quite a few windows in it, and it faces gardens of existing houses in North Street. Is their privacy protected adequately? And the other point is, it's nice to see that an historic facade such as this is being saved and restored. But is the elevation to the left of that facade going to replicate, or are you satisfied that it's a useful addition to the street scene when you look at the building to the right occupied by the solicitors, which is a unfortunate 60s inheritance? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. Gail, do you wish to comment, please?
Yeah, sure. So just on your last point, I mean, the historic buildings conservation officer, they spent quite a bit of time assessing the application. They're satisfied that the new addition sat behind the facade. It's set back. I suppose it has a relatively low profile and it has a flat roof. They're satisfied with the design of that building, in relation to the wider street scene and the listed facade. And then on your privacy question, I'll share my slide. It's easier to explain, I think. So I think it was this elevation you were concerned about, because this is one that faces the properties on North Street. So this is the sort of street level at the moment. So we're not concerned about windows on this ground floor level. They'll face towards what is essentially a brick wall. And then these windows here, there's some boundary treatments alongside the neighbouring property, so we're not concerned that they would face into any habitable windows or their garden. These windows here, only this window is serving a habitable room, and if it was left as it is, then it could potentially overlook the neighbouring garden. So we've imposed a condition for, notwithstanding what's shown here, for a different kind of window, so a window like a high level window to prevent overlooking of the neighbouring garden.
And that's covered by condition, is it, Gail?
That's covered by a condition, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Gail. No one else is indicating. Is somebody prepared to make a proposal, please?
Chair,
Yes.
I propose that we accept the officer's recommendation on this particular application.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder, please?
Yeah, that's second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Gail, could you implement the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, I accept the officer's recommendations and conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Watkins, are you there? I'll come back. Councillor White.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, for the recommendation.
Councillor Lacey.
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Forsey.
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. That's a unanimous vote for the officer's recommendations.
Okay. Could I just make a comment? I mean, this is an important decision for the planning committee because there was a tragic fire in this area, and it's our city centre, and now we've got a new church adjacent to this development, and it's a development of a derelict building. Retaining the facade is excellent. The affordable housing 100% is excellent. So it's a good thing for the city centre. Thank you very much. Could we then move to the next item on your agenda, item 3, pages 55 to 61. It's application 21-1256. The site is Windmill Farm, Llanvaches. Ward is Langstone. Ward members, councillors Ray Mogford and William Routley. The presenting officer is Geraint Roberts. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. Okay, hopefully you can all see the presentation. So this application then is at Windmill Farm in Llanvaches, in the eastern part of the city. Right. Just bear with me for a moment, and I'll just go through the introduction of the report then. So in terms of the development proposal then, it is to relocate the previously approved parking area, reinstate the slope to match adjacent slope, and to eliminate a 2-metre drop and provision of a field soakaway. And the recommendation which officers have is that the development should be granted with conditions. So in terms of an introduction then, the site is Windmill Farm, that is located to the south of Windmill Lane, which is the back road between Llanvaches and Llanfair-Dysgoed, approximately 450 metres east of Llanvaches village. The farmhouse has permission to be extended and converted to a small children's home. There is also permission for an annex to provide semi-independent accommodation for older children. The new parking area is outside of the original application boundary, which has necessitated this new application. The permission also allowed for the demolition of redundant agricultural buildings, in part to create a parking area. Under this submission, the parking area is to be relegated eastwards from where originally shown onto an area previously occupied by demolished buildings. The original parking area is to be reinstated as a grassy bank for safety reasons. The parking area will have 5 number spaces, 2 of which will be wider disabled spaces, and there will be scope to charge 2 electric vehicles. Low-level lighting bollards are also proposed. Circulation space will be ample, and there are several large trees in the area. The proposal also includes an area of soakaway in the field adjacent to the proposed annex. This is designed to receive elements of the surface water drainage from the site. Okay, so looking at the presentation then, the areas in question have been outlined in blue cross hatching. The farmhouse itself is here, where the cursor is. The access lane is here. Okay, so this comes down from Windmill Lane, and the site is, broadly speaking, not visible from public vantage points. Okay, now the original car park was proposed in this location, but instead it's being moved slightly to the east and will be in this location here. And you can see from this outline map that the footprint of a variety of buildings was previously in this area of the site. The soakaway is in this secondary area over here, just to the south of the building complex. Okay, so moving on then to the aerial photographs, they will illustrate the rural character of the site. The original complex of buildings is here, so that's the farmhouse. And these were the sequence of barns that supported the agricultural activity on the site. Now, the original plan was to demolish this shed here, which was a hay store, which was cut into this bank and put the parking area in there. Now, basically, because that would have left a free face and a fall risk, the developer, which is the council, has decided they don't want to do that. They want to move the parking area further to the east onto the footprint of this group of buildings here, which have now been removed. And you can see all of that in the current aerial photograph. So only a small number of those original buildings have been retained. They were the older, more attractive brick-built buildings. The more modern, less attractive agricultural buildings have been removed. Okay, so that's a site in its more or less current position with the development ongoing. So the car parking area is moving from here and it's going over here. Okay, that's the plan. Okay, and again, that's just illustrated by the drawings which have been submitted. You can see the original proposal, parking area here, now moved over here instead. Okay, and again, that area of soakaway clearly indicated on the drawings to the south of the annex building. Okay, so that is the development proposal. It's relatively straightforward. And just for clarification, the soakaway area will be in the adjacent agricultural field, and what that will do is dissipate flows from the package sewage treatment, which will be built on the site. Now, you'll appreciate from the photographs, this is a remote rural area. It doesn't have main sewerage, so the proposal is to deal with foul drainage through a package sewage treatment works, which will release clean water into that soakaway, which is shown on this drawing here, which will be in the field. Okay, that's a perfectly normal arrangement in rural areas. The operator will need a discharge license from NRW to do that. That's a separate power, but there will be controls over environmental standards under other legislation, as I say, exercised by Natural Resources Wales. Okay, so that's more or less a short version of what the proposal is. Now, the key issues which have been identified in the report for you, I'll just refresh your memories on those. One is the extension of a development area, because all of this is outside of the red line of the original application. The new application was required to regularize things. So there is a modest extension of the site area. The report explains how overall that's not considered harmful to the rural character of the area and is in broad terms acceptable. So that's relatively straightforwardly dealt with. In terms of the tree impact, you'll appreciate from the aerial photographs, there was a substantial group of trees which were going to be in the vicinity of the new car park. Effectively, they are all ash, and the tree officer has recommended that they are removed because they are showing early signs of ash dieback. So those trees effectively cease to be of any real impact on the development proposal because they're just not going to be there. Okay, but the tree officer has also requested that a condition is applied seeking replacement tree planting. Now, you appreciate the site is rural and it's big. There's plenty of room for trees which can be appropriately located somewhere in the site. So we're seeking a condition to get some replacement trees to maintain rural character and cover for the loss of those which are being removed. And as I'll just stress, they're not being removed because of a development. They're being removed because they're diseased. Okay. There were some other minor issues which we've briefly gone through in the report. One is drainage. I've briefly discussed what the soakaway is and how it will work, so I won't elaborate on that. I say it's a very normal arrangement subject to controls outside of planning and therefore not a concern to us. And the final issue is that a degree of external lighting was proposed to facilitate the use of the car parking area and the access lane. We are quite sensitive about lighting in rural areas for obvious reasons. It can have extremely detrimental effects on rural character and it can be very intrusive. However, the details provided are acceptable. They show low-level bollard lighting and limited external lighting on the buildings to just offer security and safety for the residents. So we're quite content that the proposed lighting is acceptable, and we are suggesting a condition is applied securing the delivery of that lighting and none other, and also controlling when it is turned on. So basically we're saying in less social hours, late at night, very early in the morning, it shouldn't be turned on because of the potentially detrimental impact to rural character if the site was lit up unnecessarily. So all in all, we consider the development to be acceptable, and we recommend that it is granted subject to the conditions in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you very much. If we move to committee, are there any questions or does someone wish to make a recommendation, please? Councillor Watkins, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. We're changing the area for parking. Is there any reduction in the number of parking or the parking spaces by changing the areas?
No, councillor. Basically, it's simply being moved. One thing we have done, which I didn't mention in the presentation, is we've said that the original car park has to be reinstated as a natural slope as proposed. That's just to make sure that the fall risk, which the council is worried about, is removed, and also to ensure that there isn't a proliferation of parking across the site, which actually would be detrimental to rural character if we allowed both car parks to exist, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
But to answer the question, no, there won't be a reduction. There'll be enough parking.
And I noticed they have electrical charging point there as well.
Yeah, that's proposed. We again suggest a condition is applied to secure that, to make sure we actually do it.
Yeah.
We see that as beneficial in sustainability terms. So yes, we'd like that to happen.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Thank you. Well, there's no one else indicating. Does someone wish to propose, please?
Yeah,
Oh,
Chair, I wish to propose the officer's recommendation to grant.
Okay.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could we then move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, I accept the officer's recommendation on the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins?
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor White?
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ferris?
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, for the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Lacey?
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Forsey?
For.
And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. That's unanimous vote for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. If we could then move to item 4 on your agenda, which is page 61 to 71. It's application number 21-0133. The site is Newport Provisions Market. The ward is Stow Hill. Ward members, Councillors Kate Thomas, Councillors Micdad Al-Nuami, and the presenting officer, Gail Parkhouse.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, yes, this application it relates to 2 sites outside of Newport Market, one on the High Street side and on the Upper Dock Street side. It's an application for some covered seating areas to the High Street side of the market, and seating to the Upper Dock Street side of the market. The application is brought before Planning Committee because the council has an ownership interest in the land. Just to quickly run through some slides of the site. This is the High Street side of the building. You can see some low-level walls and some steps. More recently, they've actually started to put in some of the planters around the seating areas. So this is what it looks like currently. And here, and here. And then a view looking in, you can see that they're incorporating the existing walls which are currently present. And then this is the Upper Dock Street side as it currently is. So yeah, some construction works obviously going on in the market, so it's fenced off. So the seating would be in this location, and then seating along the pavement here as well. This is just more of an historic side taken from street view, just to give you an idea of what the pavement looked like before construction works were taking place. So these are some slides then of the proposed works. It's proposed to provide 2 seating areas on the High Street side to provide 88 seats around tables. There will be a walkway then through from High Street into the seating area, into the market, a walkway here and a walkway here, and then space here for movements as well. It's proposed to incorporate those existing low-level walls, which are these grey areas here, and then to mark the boundaries of the site with those planters you saw in the photos here and here, and then also cover the seating areas with 2.5 meter high pergolas, which would have black steel frames and green roofs. The outer sides of the seating areas would be partly enclosed by clear acrylic vertical sides. And then you can see that those pergolas in elevation, and then a cross section through showing the seating areas and those planters. On the Upper Dock Street side then, it's proposed to provide a strip of seating around tables again, 36 seats around tables in this section. And again, a line of planters alongside the road, and this time parasol umbrellas to provide cover, which would be weighted, and the crosshatch area just shows the extent of those parasols. Further down along Upper Dock Street, two much smaller areas of seating here and here, surrounded by those planters, and each with their own parasol. And then also the creation of a loading bay with some bollards here. So in terms of considerations then, and in terms of publicity, we consulted all properties within 50 metres of the application site, which included 421 properties, and we put a site notice and a press notice in the paper. No responses or objections to those. So these are the main considerations, which I'll quickly run through. Principle of development then, the seating areas were in the city centre shopping area. The High Street side is also within the cafe quarter, and policy R5 encourages outdoor seating areas in this area. So in general, there is policy support for the proposal. In terms of highways and pedestrian safety, the council's highways officer has raised a number of concerns relating to highway and pedestrian safety, which the applicant has sought to address through amended plans. By and large, those concerns have been addressed, particularly on the High Street side, where there now is some better circulation around the seating areas. There is some remaining concerns from the highways officer though. They're concerned that the stepped access to Griffin Street shouldn't be blocked off. We've considered this, but we're satisfied that given the proximity of this new route through to High Street, the blocking off of this access wouldn't be demonstrably harmful. The other concern from the highways officer is that this seating area encroaches onto the existing loading bay which exists here, so it would subsume two of the bollards which currently exist. We've noted those concerns, but we're satisfied that this line of planters here, which would be weighted and bolted together, would sufficiently protect this seating area. Also, the loading bay is the use of it is only limited between the hours of 6 AM and 10 AM, and that's set out in a traffic order, I understand. The opening hours of the market are also only from 9 AM, so there's a very limited time where both uses coincide. So considering that, we're satisfied with this arrangement shown here. Looking to the Upper Dock Street side, the highways officer has concern that the seating areas would reduce the width of the footways between the market building and the seating area. The footpath would be 2 metres wide, so this would allow pedestrians to pass each other in both directions. But there may be rare occasions where, say, 2 wheelchairs or 2 pushchairs pass each other, and this could be more of a squeeze. However, you'll note that there isn't a solid barrier along here. There are opportunities for people to stand or move into these spaces and pass each other. So on that rare occasion, odd occasion, when this area might become occasionally crowded. We're satisfied that there are enough spaces where people can pass each other. And then further south, these areas here, they're small enough to prevent there to be significant congestion. The other remaining concern then from the highways officer on the Upper Dock Street side was the encroachment, the proximity of the seating area onto the road. Like High Street, we're satisfied that these planters, which are weighted again, bolted together, would protect the seating areas. And again, like High Street, access is restricted to 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And again, opening hours starting at 9 a.m. Very small window where the two would coincide. So on balance, in terms of highways, subject to a condition just to ensure the coverings meet the minimum height clearance 2.4 metres, we're satisfied that the impact on highway and pedestrian safety would be acceptable. In terms of residential amenity, there are residential uses on High Street and Griffin Streets, but we recognise that the area has a nighttime economy already. It's a very commercial area. The opening hours for the markets are less than some of the late night establishment opening hours. So we're satisfied that the existing occupiers wouldn't be subject to any additional noise and disturbance over and above that which currently exists. Looking then at design and heritage, the market obviously is a listed building, it's in the conservation area. The proposed seating is detached from the building, so a listed building consent isn't required. But we still need to have special regard to the desirability of preserving the setting of the building. The Historic Buildings and Conservation Officer hasn't raised an objection to the proposals. There were some queries which have now been addressed and to the satisfaction of the officer. And you'll note the late representation, which clarifies that it's no longer recommended that a condition requiring the details of the planters is imposed, as we now have that detail. So overall, it's considered that the temporary nature of the seating and their fixings would preserve the setting of the listed building and the ground paving. Sorry, the materials are considered acceptable, and a management plan is being submitted to ensure that the green roofs, planters and hard surfaces are maintained to ensure that the ongoing visual appearance of the building and the seating areas are maintained. So we recommend that management plan is secured through a condition, and with that we consider the impact on the listed building, or the setting of the listed building, and the appearance of the conservation area would be preserved. In terms of the impact on archaeology, it is in a sensitive area, but the Archaeological Trust have not raised an objection. They don't consider that the works would result in archaeological significant material being encountered. And then just to sum up, really, the proposed works are considered acceptable, and we're recommending that permission is granted subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Okay, Gail, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I move to committee now. I've got Councillor Forsey, Councillor Jordan and Councillor Ferris, please. Councillor Forsey.
Thank you very much. I think I would disagree with highways, and I would say that blocking off the bottom end of that seating area on High Street is a beneficial thing, because the steps there have provided a sort of a slight trip hazard, I think, in the past, and using that for this purpose would prevent that. Although the steps are quite shallow, if I remember correctly, because they are so shallow, sometimes people miss that they're there at all. So I think this eliminates a slight problem in that area, and yeah, I welcome this. I think it must be showing what a success the new market development is if they're wanting to extend the seating area, and yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Forsey. Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Could Gail give me reassurance then? Because as far as I'm aware, I'm a taxi driver as well. Actually, up at Dock Street, there actually got a taxi rank there at the moment, and that still uses his premises outside for taxis to go up and down. Well, to go actually up alongside the market. Are they looking to block it off? And I also noticed as well, when you've got deliveries actually in the area, some of the lorries can't even turn to go back onto Skinner Street. They actually go up alongside the market and up past the bus station, you know, because I know Gail said it's being blocked off from the deliveries between 6 and 10, and that gets closed off. Is that still the case? And it's going to be the case? And if so, what impact is going to have with the local shops along there, and even the taxi rank there as well?
Can we give Gail a time to? Can you answer that, Gail? Now, or?
Only to say, you know, my understanding is that loading restriction or the access restriction is in place from 6 AM till 10 AM. So I understand that there shouldn't be access along Upper Dock Street after 10 AM. Whether that's being enforced at the moment, I'm not sure, but I understand that's what the traffic order requires.
Okay. But in that case, an outcome, if it's still open, it's still actually being used, you know, and that's given some of the premises there, you know, affects their business to be along that road as well, you know. And have they come, as I say, have they come to with the lorries actually delivering some of the deliveries for the dray for the Windsor Castle? Sometimes these lorries can turn around that corner onto Skinner Street where Carousel is because of the disabled parking spot there, so they need to go straight up past the market to actually get out.
I think, with respect, you're broadening it a bit, and we're moving away from this application. What you've raised, most probably, Councillor Jordan, is valid, but we need to take that up in another arena, don't we? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Ferris.
Yeah. Pardon me if I've missed it, but will the seating be brought in at night? And if so, where are they going to store it?
I'm not sure whether they intend to bring it in at night time. You know, both areas would be covered. So yeah, it's not fixed to the ground, but so I mean that would be up to how the occupiers of the premises which it serves wish to operate.
I would wonder that, say, in the event of disorder, chairs can get thrown, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean that's for a policing matter, I would imagine.
Okay, thank you. No one else is indicating. Is somebody prepared to make a recommendation, please? Oh, Councillor Watkins, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. I didn't think you'd be so quick. Upper Dock Street, the seating area there. Chair, I do have concerns about this, as there's no barriers between that or very little barriers between that and the highway part. The other thing is waste. I believe there's a waste collection point on Upper Dock Street as well. Is there a gap in between the seating area to allow that to take place, or have they changed the waste collection area to another location?
I believe on the Upper Dock Street there's a sort of a servicing unit within the market building itself, which could be used, I assume, for waste collection. On the Upper Dock, on the High Street side, that they are showing some bins within the seating areas itself.
Yes, but there was a communal waste area. Well, basically it was enclosed within the market shop as such. The entrance to the market you have, then you have a shop, and then you had the waste disposal collection skip, which members of the market could dispose of their waste. Now, I'm assuming when I spoke to at the planning committee referenced this last time, whether they were going to increase it or not, the answer was no, that's up to them. But obviously the collection of waste is still going to be required. The bulk waste I'm on about now from Upper Dock Street. And how's that going to happen if you've got seating area along the Upper Dock Street outside the market itself?
I mean, all I would say is that the seating areas are just a kind of an extension of the existing A1 or A3 units, which within the market themselves. So, you know, it'd be up to the occupiers, the operators of those units to collect waste from what is quite a small seating area, and you know, and use the waste strategy then for the market in its entirety.
Can you show me, Gail, can you show me the plan of Upper Dock Street then, please?
Yeah.
Okay, the entrance to the market development is the shaded area, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah.
Then you have a development, a shop. Then next to that, you have a waste collection point with it where the skip is. Inside there, and that is where the council normally collected the waste from with the skip. So is that still remaining, or is it going to be developed into A3s or A1s?
I'm not sure, and that's not really part of what we're considering under this application at the moment. So, you know, the works, the proposed works don't involve anything to do with what's happening internally within the market itself. Only that, you know, the A1, A3 units, which these seating areas would serve, you know, they need to dispose of their waste in the same way as every other unit would need to in the market building. I don't think the seating areas really affect that to any great degree.
They will affect the collection of the waste from the internal market users if they got seating the whole length of Upper Dock Street. There has to be a gap for that collection of waste.
Right, I see what you're saying. So, so it's proposed to, it's proposed to have this loading bay in here, and this is a servicing unit here.
Yep.
So you know, directly outside that loading bay. So I can only assume the servicing unit is, you know, for where waste might be stored prior to collection.
Right. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Thank you, Gail. Somebody prepared to make a proposal, please?
Chair, I propose we accept the officer's recommendation. Can I say this is something, a bit of an ambience. We're trying to follow European standards of sitting out on the pavement. As the security and that's another matter. But you know, it's all a plus. But so I propose that we accept it. Yeah.
All we need is good weather. Is there someone prepared to second that, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Okay, could we move to the vote, please?
Councillor Guy, can I have your vote, please?
I accept the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Watkins?
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor White?
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ferris?
For the recommendations.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, for, but I am a bit concerned with the seating area on Upper Dock Street, though.
Councillor Lacey?
For. You're the king.
Councillor Forsey?
For the recommendation, I think we're going to miss Councillor Guy for moving us on so ably in planning meetings.
It is for me to say that, not for you, Councillor. No. Carry on, sorry, with the vote. Shouldn't interfere with the vote.
Councillor Spencer?
For.
Thank you. And finally yourself, please, Chair.
For the recommendation.
That's unanimous vote then for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, if we then move.
Can I just check when Councillor Spencer joined the meeting.
Yes, I did join. I did join in the previous
Right.
planning, so I didn't cast any vote in that one. And I do apologise for being late. I've been to the hospital with my daughter.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, so we've got clarification. The final item on the agenda is the appeals decisions, which are on page 73. For information only, do we agree to note? Thank you. We come to the end of the meeting. I won't say what I said at the start. I sincerely thank all members of the planning committee for their support and involvement over the many years. In particular, John Guy and Richard White, who are retiring at this time from local government involvement. Thank you for your contribution over the many years. And as I said earlier, the people of Newport have benefited from the fact that you were on planning as far as I'm concerned. So with that, I hope I've covered everything. Goodbye to all. Yep, sorry.
Sorry, could I just add on behalf of officers, our sincere thanks. Best of luck to those members who are standing again, but many thanks for those members who are stepping down. Planning committee is a difficult beast, and there are challenges and we don't always agree, but it's always been very much a pleasure and a partnership in working with you all to make sure that we make the right decisions at the right time. So on behalf of officers, thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Tracy. And I would just emphasise for anyone who's watching who don't understand, the planning committee is non-political. Okay, so the best of luck to everyone on the 5th of May if they're still seeking re-election.
Chair, I think we should thank the officers for their expertise in presenting applications to the committee. I've been on the committee since January 2006, apart from a 2-year when I was a cabinet member, and I found them to be very professional all the way through.
Yeah.
Can I just add, you obviously got to be professionally backed, but this committee, there's no hiding places.
That's true. I'll agree with that as chair. Yes, thank you very much. But thanks and sincere thanks to everybody. And if I could now formally close the meeting, thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.